Welcome to Andy Ari On3, presented by Wendy's, and happy Wednesday, which means it is a Wendy's Sauciest Take Wednesday. Ari is responsible for the 3 saucy takes this time. Ari, you got to admit, my Jalen Milroe will have his Heisman moment against Georgia was a pretty good take. Looking pretty good right now.
Yeah, when it'll be officially a great take is when you change your mind about Travis Hunter. Okay, we're going to get there, but no,
change my mind. I have Travis Hunter number 1 in my Heisman ballot.
That's what I'm saying. When you put Jalen Milroe number 1, then your take comes true completely.
Listen, as long as Travis Hunter's doing this, I don't know how to break this to everybody. There's nobody else like that, so he's going to stay there. But Jalen Milroe will probably win because I won't. Like the rest of them aren't going to vote like me. So Jalen Milroe will win if he's the best quarterback on the best team. Like that, we know that, and so we'll see that throw to Ryan Williams over and over and over again, and a bunch of other plays from that game.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because you and I have fundamental disagreements about how the Heisman should be voted on, but at the same time,
I do it correctly and you do it wrong. That's true.
Yeah, you say that every time. But I wanted to say that we're on the same page on this one. Like, I don't know that we're going to be having very many Heisman arguments.
You because he's the greatest story, and me because he's the best player.
He's both.
Yeah. Well, the trophy says most outstanding player, so it doesn't say greatest story. We should create an award for the greatest story in college football, though. That would be awesome.
Would have gone to Connor Stallions last year.
Exactly. What can we call it? The Connor Stallions Award?
You just put a vacuum cleaner and bronze it. Like that'd be amazing.
Yes. Ari, we need a way to plant our flag as a show. Like, can you imagine if we go to whoever wins the award? I don't know who would win. Maybe it's Kirk Signetti. We'll talk about him a little bit later in the show. Like, congratulations, coach. You won the Connor Stallions Best Story of the Year award, and you hand him a bronze vacuum cleaner.
Yeah. We could come up with a design and actually just present it on the show. I'll go get it made. Like, I don't know how expensive it is to get a trophy, but even if they don't accept it in year 1, we could present it through the airwaves and then have the trophy made here physically. And then maybe next year it'll catch on and we could actually have a presentation for it. That'd be great.
It's actually not that bad. And so a few years ago, there was a deal at my wife's work where they would give a trophy out every month, like a little tiny trophy every month to an employee that they thought was doing the best. And she never won. And it started to get to her because she's like clearly the best employee. And so I had this ridiculously gigantic trophy made for her, and it just showed up at the house one day.
That's amazing.
We keep coupons in it now, but yeah. It's
I'm in a fantasy football league where we have an actual trophy. So, and people care about it, which it gives you a little clue into how my life is. But we'll look into that and we'll design it. We'll have the On3 design team help us out with it. And then maybe we'll present it at the end of the year. And maybe we could change the phrasing from best story to craziest story, because that makes it more fun.
They're going to be insulted if you hand them a trophy that says craziest story. Just call it story of the year.
Story of the year. Story of the year. And it's a bronze vacuum cleaner with a person sitting on top of it holding a cell phone like this, like they're filming with Ray-Bans on. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But we have a pretty packed show. I'm feeling very saucy just this week in general, Andy. You teed me up. I got the Puppet Master co-host here who knows exactly what's going to set me off. He lines up the ball, puts it on the tee, and just sits back and puts his arms over his head and lets it cook. But today I'm going to be, I think, a little saucy. I don't know. We'll see how you feel about some of the things that I think.
You called me last night, or you texted me last night, and you said, talk me off the ledge here. Is everyone going to think I'm insane if I go with this?
Yes.
So, and to me, like, I just smile when I see that, because that is exactly what this segment is for. So that's fine. Yeah. But before we get to that, we have a couple things we need to talk about. One of those is a story of the year nominee. And actually, we need graphics and music for this. We could come up with our own original story of the year song. It's the story of the year. I think I'm trying to do Never Ending Story, but I'm not hitting it. The story of the year. All right. So first story of the year nominee. Maybe we'll make this a weekly segment too. This is how this works. We grassroots.
Yeah. It's natural workshopping.
First story of the year nominee is Diego Pavia, who has already revolutionized Vanderbilt football. Did it first with New Mexico State football, doing it again in Nashville with Vanderbilt football. They are playing Alabama this week. Producer River, show us what Diego Pavia said.
This is a whole new team. The NIL era is, every team will be different every single year. But we got a team full of dogs who prepare every week like they want to play on Sundays. And so with that, the only person that knows who's going to win on Saturday is God. So we'll be prepared. We're going to do everything we can to win a football game. We fell just short to number 6 or 7 team in the nation. So we got to get over that little edge and then start punching some wins here.
The only person who knows is God, though Vegas seems to think it has a pretty good idea.
Well, it's funny that you play this clip because I was just talking to my former editor a few days ago, Mitch Light at The Athletic, and Vandy legitimately should be 4-0 right now. If you go back and look at the way that they lost the Mizzou game, maybe they would have lost it even if they made that field goal when the game was extended, but they had chances to win that game. And then the Georgia State debacle was just it was crazy. They scored 22 points in the fourth quarter and they just couldn't get a stop. They had to come back. They came back and then, gave it up again. What if Vandy was 4-0? We're going to talk about another team that kind of has been viewed in the same light as Vandy in the past in terms of just being the conference cellar dweller. But Vanderbilt is not a joke of a team this year. Now, I do know that there is a meme or a video that gets circulated around about how somebody on Vanderbilt's team 5-6 years ago said, and Bama's next or something. And then the next week they just show
2017 defensive lineman Nephi Leolau.
Okay. Yeah.
Alabama, you're next. Final score of that game, Alabama 59, Vanderbilt nothing. Ari, looking at this line. So God knows who's going to win. We don't. Vegas thinks Alabama's going to win by 23.5. Is it weird to you, as weird to you as it is to me, that Vandy is the same level of underdog to Bama that Auburn is to Georgia?
Yeah, and Michigan State is to Oregon.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the same general neighborhood. Here's the thing. Coming off of a game that Alabama's coming off of, it's emotional. This is just a natural, maybe takes a quarter and a half to get going, type of a game. And, Vandy's actually not a joke of a team this year that can score. So, I don't think that it's crazy. I think that I disagree with only God knows who's going to win. I think we know who's going to win the game, but I guess that's why they play them. But, the good thing here, Andy, is, you want personalities like Diego Pavia in this sport.
Love it.
You want people to feel like they have a chance to win or are going to win. And I actually do believe, and maybe this is because I've been to Sedona many times, but I do believe in positive manifestation of your thoughts control your behaviors, your thoughts, help you. If you think positively, you go into the game not scared, you might help you perform better or not shrink in the moment. I think that there's some power to that. And I do think that this Vanderbilt football team, to a certain extent, probably does believe that they can compete with this Alabama team. And listen, this is the craziest sport on earth, and you never know what's going to happen. I'm 99.9% sure that Alabama is going to win, but weird things happen. And sometimes, games are games when you don't think they should be games in the third quarter. When we were in Wisconsin a few weeks ago, we saw Georgia almost lose to Kentucky. So you never know. The game is at home, thankfully. I think that the game that they lost 59-0 was at Alabama, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I love the personality, and I kind of just wish that Vandy was 4-0 so we could get hyped for it.
I love Diego Pavia because he is not scared. You could send Diego Pavia to play against the Kansas City Chiefs this week, and he'd say the same thing. Mm-hmm. He does not care. There is no opponent that scares him. This is a guy who took New Mexico State into Jordan-Hare and won 31-10 last year. This is why the Auburn fans are so wary of that Vanderbilt game coming up later this year. But I love this. I love this. You are a Story of the Year nominee, Diego Pavia. You may, at some point, have a bronze vacuum cleaner.
Can I give you a bonus Wendy Saucy Take before we get into the Saucy Takes, Andy?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't know if pity is the right word, but there's no program that I felt worse for than Vanderbilt in the change of the NIL era. That's not to say that I don't love the NIL era or think that it should exist, but Vanderbilt hired Barton Simmons and Clark Lee. They came up with a plan that I actually believe they could execute, which is to find players who are undervalued or, have great traits, but might be raw, people who aren't ranked high in the recruiting rankings, build a roster, develop them ferociously, and try to build a football team, that's really good every 3-4 years. Like, I thought that was like a really good way to go about it. And Barton Simmons, if you ever talk to the guy, is like a handsome, smart dude who knows what he's doing. And then the NIL era comes along, and like Vandy, when they're right and they develop guys or find undervalued guys that they took that no one else was willing to take, is at risk now of losing them every offseason, which completely throws a wrench on the entire way the program was trying to be built. So I always respect coaches and administrators and staff members who identify a plan, try to execute that plan, and the plan makes sense and works. Like Michigan, I think, is the crowning example of that, following your plan relentlessly until it works. And it just stinks that once they got there, their entire plan kind of got thrown out the window because the rules of the game changed, making it harder for Vanderbilt to execute that plan. So that I just think that.
Well, we'll find out. Only God knows. That's why they play the games. I love Diego Pavia. I can't wait to see him with his vacuum cleaner. Dean in the chat, responding to our Heisman conversation just a minute ago. Not sure why you keep overlooking Ashton Jeanty, by far the most impressive football player this year, and it's not close. Well, that's not true. He's not by far the most impressive player. Travis Hunter is by far the most impressive player because nobody's done this in 70 years. Ashton Jeanty is extremely impressive, which is why Ari and I both have him in our top 3 for the Heisman. And I'm telling you right now, the Heisman's going to go to the best quarterback on the best team, whether we vote that way or not. We are both voters. I can tell you right now, if Jeanty keeps doing what he's doing or Travis Hunter keeps doing what he's doing, it's probably going to be one of those two for me because what they're both doing is insane and we don't see that very often. But that's not how everybody else is going to vote.
Yeah, here's the thing, too. It's like Ashton Jeanty Hive is out there. Like, you feel it every Saturday when On3 posts our Heisman top 3 graphic. There is a lot of people out there, like, upset that Ashton Jeanty isn't number 1 or that other people left him off the top 3 completely. Here's the best thing that Ashton Jeanty could probably do is that if he keeps averaging a first down or a touchdown every time he touches the football, like Boise State is probably going to make the playoff. So, like, there is a chance here that this man can carry. And if he does single-handedly carry Boise State to the playoff and
win.
Hunter, have a regression, like I do think that he has an actual chance to win. Like I don't know. I hope that in the evolution that we're seeing in this sport where, a wider range of teams make it, there's a different story. Like Boise State making the playoff this year as a 12 or an 11 seed, if they're really, really good, playing Oregon down to the last play of the game. Like 2 years ago, that story doesn't exist because Boise doesn't make the playoff and they get forgotten. If they make the playoff now, that story exists, and I think it keeps them in the front of the mind. So I know that you don't care about the storylines of things, but I think that storylines help accentuate attention.
I care a lot about. I am a professional writer, Ari. I care deeply.
No, you don't care about it.
Heisman that way.
But I'm saying, we're talking about the Heisman. So when I said the Heisman, you don't care about the story. I think that the story can help keep somebody in the spotlight, even if you're not particularly fond of voting that way. Like, I think that Ashton will have more attention at the end of the year when people are casting votes as a result of leading his team to the playoff if they would otherwise been in the Fiesta Bowl in a non-playoff year. That's all I'm saying. So, I don't think that it's over by any stretch of the imagination. And just because Andy and I think that Travis Hunter should win the Heisman, like, the man's not going to win. And I wrote this in the column last week. There are a lot of people out there that inherently don't like Colorado, inherently don't like Deion Sanders, and will punish him for those things, and that's unfortunate. But, we've been accused a lot of hating on Colorado. And frankly speaking, next week when they play a game again, we got to talk about if they're going to be like, if
they can
they're not
Kansas
dead
State,
yet.
they're a legit Big 12 title contender. So,
and we get to watch that together.
Go Dog in the chat says Boise State in the playoffs. Kellen Moore would be smiling. Go Dog. He's not dead. He's just the offensive coordinator of the Eagles.
He can still smile. Yeah.
You may have thought he was dead watching the Bucs game, but he's alive. He can smile. So, all right, we got to talk little prize picks, best daily fantasy game in America. Play $5, get $50 instantly when you sign up and use the code STAPLES. Now, we are going to play a little guess the number here because PrizePicks has not put Cade Klubnik's number out yet for the Florida State game. But our guy Pete Nakos put out a story yesterday and put a tweet out with some stats that are just wild because we should have done the mystery player here. Like who's the only Power 4 quarterback to do this? Thrown for 12 plus touchdowns, have a 60% or higher completion percentage, and an average depth of target of 11 plus yards. So this is not a person doing this on super high confidence, behind the line of scrimmage passes. This dude is airing it out. That's Cade Klubnik right now. Cade Klubnik, who after the Georgia game, you and I were both like, do they need to look at something different here? Cade Klubnik is killing it right now.
Yeah. And here's the thing with Clemson. A lot of their success in the past, most of their success in the past has been driven by generational college football, NFL quarterback talents. You know, I know Trevor Lawrence is struggling in the league right now, which I didn't see coming. I don't think a lot of people did.
No.
But their two national championship teams were led by Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. And before the playoff era and before the NIL era, Clemson was the only program to win a national title without having signed a top 5 class in any of the previous 4 recruiting cycles going into it. Like, they have been the biggest exception to the recruiting rule that has become, you know, the chief guiding star of my outlook on the sport. So, like, when they got Cade Klubnik, I mean, we're talking about a person that was held in similar regard to Watson and Lawrence at that point in their careers. And, you know, it didn't start off that way for him there. And it's like, now that Clemson lost to Georgia by a lot, you know, it is easy to fade back into the background as we're concerned with other teams who haven't lost yet. You're probably not watching Clemson as closely as you would have been if they were undefeated. And the guys out here racking numbers. And I'm starting to wonder, Andy, like, is Cade Klubnik starting to take that next step to become the game-breaking, game-changing, elite-level NFL prospect quarterback that Clemson has typically had there under Dabo?
It's entirely possible. I think part of it is they figured out how to use his legs, which he's very fast. You've seen him break off long runs for touchdowns, but also more just moving around in the pocket, which I think allows his receivers more time to get open. It extends plays. When they're dealing with better defensive lines, it should help. Now, here is the problem. It may be the defenses they were playing.
Sure.
Now, Florida State's defense is not great either. So let us figure out what the number is going to be for his passing yardage. I think his touchdowns will probably be a 1.5, more than or less than. And then they may have a little demon and goblin action with him.
It's usually 1.5 anyway. Like that, I think that's the right big guess there. Yeah.
But for his passing yardage total, so his games this year have been very interesting. Now, obviously, he was lights out in the Appalachian State game. He was 24-26 for 378 yards. Actually not particularly accurate in the Stanford game, but hit a bunch of explosives. So 15 of 31 for 255, which is 8.2 yards per attempt. But that means the ones you're completing are going a long, long way. So that's the question. Like, how accurate do we think he's going to be? Because if he's accurate, then we're talking, because he, again, the air yards stat that Pete threw out, I think is really interesting because, or the depth of target, excuse me, because that's not normal in today's college football. Normal, the depth of target is like 6 yards. So the fact that he's chucking it down the field, that this offense is very vertical, and does it stay vertical against Florida State's defense? I think it probably can, because you're going to scare Florida State with Phil Maffa and that ground game. So we'll find out against more talented, like better talent on defense. We don't know this is a better defense than what they've seen. So I am going to go with 264.5. That is my guess at the Cade Klubnik number. And I think there's a chance he goes more than that, because you've seen this Florida State defense kind of wear out at times. And if that happens, then the pass rush dissipates. And the fact that they're moving around better, I don't know that the pass rush is going to get to him as much. And that's when he was throwing interceptions and putting the ball in harm's way. I think he's in a much better place to play this particular defense now. So I want to say 264.5 is my guess at the number. I'm going to go more than. We'll see what the actual number is, but you know how I would feel about it when you see it.
Yeah, it's funny. We didn't talk about it. We knew we were going to play guess the number because PrizePicks doesn't have it up yet. It should be up shortly. Mine was going to be like 253.5. So I think that we were kind of like in the same general area there. And, I think obviously too, like whether he eclipses that number is going to go a long way in telling us what he's able to do. Now, I know that like App State turned out to not be what we thought they were. And, they haven't played a tough
right. NC State wasn't what they thought we were going to be either. But
I think we just lighting up Florida State, even if their defense isn't what we thought it was going to be, still probably is a nice indication that things are turning there. Like, we don't want to get fooled, but the thing with Clemson too is that if we're not going to count this Florida State game as anything because they've lost a bunch of games and they stink, then like what's the best opportunity for Clemson on their schedule to actually prove they're able to hang? And that's part of the reason why I came up with the take after they lost to Georgia of like, they could go win 10 or 11 games after this game and no one on the national level is going to consider them an actual national championship contender because they don't have anybody on their schedule that can test them. Now they're going to play Miami maybe.
Let's see what South Carolina does. Let's see what South Carolina does, because if South Carolina beats Ole Miss this weekend, if they beat Oklahoma, like all of a sudden you're looking at South Carolina very differently. And you're looking at them like more of a challenge.
Yeah, I'm seeing this on the chat, and it's probably true. It's like if you are a defensive outfit and your offense can't get a first down, like there's only so much you can do from a gas standpoint before you just let the dam break. And also, speaking of the dam breaking, they probably just don't give a damn anymore because they're not going to be in games. Like I think that defenses are super important.
We're talking about Florida State now.
Yeah. Did I not say that? Sorry. Florida State. I was thinking about Iowa last year, and that's how I have so much regard for Phil Parker's defense. Like, they could have just given up. Like, there's no reason why they should be fighting as hard because their offense can't score. And every single week, they kept them in the game. So it's like Florida State's defense is probably better than we think it is, but hasn't been given an opportunity to A, rest, or B, care, because there's nothing that they can do to stop the other team from scoring more than Florida State's going to score, which is like nothing.
Which could be a very big game for Cade Klubnik, because I hadn't thought about that particular piece of it. But you got Brock Glenn going for Florida State this week. I'm not even going to hazard a guess at his PrizePicks number. But I think Cade Klubnik's going to get the ball a lot. I think he's going to have a lot of opportunities to rack up yards.
Yep.
Ari, while we're on the subject of Florida State, I know that is one of your saucy takes. So let's, first of all, you've had Wendy's nuggets dipped in sauce, but have you had them covered in sauce? Wendy's new Saucy Nuggs. Take the crispy and saucy nugs you love and turn them up to 11. Choose between flavors like honey barbecue, buffalo, garlic parm, or if you're a real heat seeker, try the spicy ghost pepper. Of course, you can do the hot versions of the buffalo, the honey barbecue, and the garlic parm. Highly recommend all of those. 7 delicious ways to try the nugs you already love. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, and prepare to nug like you've never nugged before. For a whole new way to nug, it's got to be Wendy's at participating U.S. Wendy's. All right, it is time for a Wendy's Sauciest Take Wednesday. And Ari, you have 3 saucy takes. One of those is about Florida State, which we were just talking about. Fire away.
Should we just start with Florida State for transition purposes?
That's what I've said 2 times, yes.
So wait, you're saying that we should start with Florida State? Okay,
I think we should start with Florida State.
So if you're not paying attention to Florida State's recruiting, they've had some decommitments the last few weeks. And I think yesterday, 4-star receiver Malik Clark decommitted. And he was, I believe, on the On3 industry, a top 250 player. They've also, after falling to 1-4, have lost Myron Charles and Javion Hilson. Like, they've gotten a little bit, they're losing steam in recruiting. And right now in the On3 industry, we're looking at a Florida State team that ranks number 18 nationally in the 2025 cycle. Now, they still have 5-star offensive lineman Solomon Thomas out of Jacksonville committed. We'll see how that goes if things continue in this direction. But, I am starting to worry about Florida State and Mike Norvell's ability to turn this thing around, not this year, but the program in general. Because my whole understanding of the direction of this program was that they were going to use last season as a way of propelling legitimacy and selling that to high school athletes in order to get Florida State back in a place where its baseline talent level was at a place that we were accustomed to seeing as we were growing up. And now we're still outside of the top 15. Players are flipping out. It's possible that you could lose your 5-star offensive lineman. I don't know if how much danger is there, but obviously anytime you have a 5-star kid who's committed and he sees your program struggling the way it is, you're nervous about that. So my question has always been, is we know that Florida State can't live and die by the transfer portal. We've already punted on caring about how the season ended because it's hopeless at this point. But from a roster building future standpoint, I'm also worried that Florida State isn't going to get back to where it was last year unless Mike Norvell goes out and signs 5 or 6 more guys in the portal that turn out to play like NFL draft picks. And like, that's a really hard thing to do year over year. So like, I know that he was up for the Alabama gig, right? Like we know that people thought that, at the end of last year that he was proving to be one of the best coaches in America. I'm terrified that this is just not going right, and it's not going to go right. I don't know where I'm at on the spice level here, but I'm no longer worried or even considering this year. But like, I don't know that I'm confident that Florida State's going to be great in 2 or 3 years down the line, because what are they doing from a roster building standpoint to change the inconsistent nature of what their roster is going to look like year to year with no baseline high school talent to kind of pave the way.
So you say your worry level on this?
7 out of 10. Could be 8 out of 10, depending on how saucy you want me to get. It's been a worry since the beginning of his tenure there, because Florida State is legitimate. Top 5 classes.
We had Norvell on the show on signing day in December and pointed out that it was the most top 200 players that they had signed since 2016. So since the Jimbo era. And it's felt like they were coming back to that the momentum was on the upswing, that was the plan. And Norvell said that was the plan, that he's not dumb. He knows you can't consistently win recruiting out of the transfer portal, that you have to build a foundation through high school. Daisu in the chat says, I like Norvell, but unfortunately he can't recruit. He needs to fire some of his staff if he even wants a shot. They really do need to recruit better. Like, losing Travis Hunter sucked, but it was like, okay, we understand that's a pretty unique situation.
Yeah, that wasn't a Florida State.
Right. Then they had this class, and you're like, okay, things are on the upswing. But if it drops right back down, then they're not on the upswing, and you're just relying on the transfer portal every year. Now, staff changes are about the only thing you can expect, because they're not firing Mike Norvell. They would owe him something like $67 million. So they're not Texas A&M. They don't have that level of money. They're not doing that. So Mike Norvell has to figure this out one way or the other. And I don't know how that's going to work. Perhaps if revenue sharing comes in, then some of that money can be reallocated, and you can try to get more guys that are young. Although because I think one of the things that Florida State did and their collective did is they were big on retention of the best players they had, and they'd go out in the portal and get really good ones, but they were not going to overspend on freshmen, which I think is a sound philosophy. Like, overspending on freshmen is, unless you just have money to burn, is a good way to burn money. Like, if you don't have a lot of money, or if you've got to be judicious with how you spend it, retention is better. Known transfer portal commodities are better.
Yeah. And I do see, like, there's a lot of comments in the chat here, and we have to acknowledge, whether those existed or not, that the NIL piece to this is important to, consider, because Andy, let's be honest, Miami hasn't had a ton of success on the field either, and they've gotten a lot of good players in high school. Like, I'm assuming, and we know that NIL they've had less success than Florida State on this. Yeah. Yeah. So I know that there's a wider range of reasons why this can happen, but I still think that in this era, we have to, look at the coach. And who do you point the finger at if you're not signing do you no longer hold the coach accountable? Like, it's really difficult.
Still the head coach's Yeah.
So, and also too with NIL, I know On3 has done a lot of reporting on this and stuff. Like players don't always take the highest amount either. Like your program, the direction of your program, your ability to develop that position, the location, all these things still play a part. And I don't know that these decommitments that they're suffering right now are happening because NIL deals fell apart. I think it's happening because their team is falling apart. So, you know, you're in a position right now as Florida State in a deep state. Like, listen, man, Alabama is not led by Nick Saban. Nick Saban spent the majority of his tenure absolutely rating the Sunshine State's best players. And I know that, you know, DeBoer is going to be doing a good job, and Alabama is still Alabama, but there is a window of opportunity here for all three Florida schools to get better at recruiting their own homegrown talent. I mean, if you go back and look, Alabama was taking a ton. I think that you could actually blame Alabama for the demise of all three programs the last 10 years. Like it's that stark. Like you're laughing.
It's not just Alabama. I mean, like Sony Michelle went to Georgia. Like
it's right.
Everybody went into Florida and cherry picked what they wanted. I mean, there's another guy we're going to talk about today, Jeremiah Smith. He's at Ohio State. He's from Florida.
And like some players from Florida have, like Ohio State is traditionally, I mean, they've been recruiting Florida since before Jim Tressel. Like that's not a new thing. But I'm saying now is a time for them to, like, I thought that they were going to make the playoff or miss the playoff the way that they did, and then use that to propel signing a top 5 class this year. And now we're looking at a, you know, top 20 class that could potentially get worse if things get worse. And I'm looking at it and it's just like, well, what's the baseline recruiting class level that you need to have to win a national championship? I know that Michigan and Washington did some things last year without but is that the new school of thought now that you only have to sign a top 25 class to win a national title? Like, is that where we're at? Because I don't know that I'm there yet.
Well, and Michigan wasn't just signing top 25 classes. I mean, Michigan was signing top 15 class. Yeah. So,
and Michigan had 5-star players all over the field.
Right. Let's not make it sound like Michigan didn't get great raw material too. They got good raw material, and then they also evaluated on some players. Yeah.
Washington also was very old and had a ton of, you know, depth and stuff, but like Washington did not recruit at the level. In fact, I hammered Washington for the last 5 years of being completely incapable of recruiting the best players in Seattle. Like it's been like, I think it had been bad. And that was pre-Kalen DeBoer. That was
well, yeah, you know, the Ohio State homers like, oh, JT Tuimoloau and
Emeka Egbuka, but it's not just that. It's like there were other ones too. So
I know. I'm kidding.
I had Mike Norvell on our last podcast and like wanted to talk to him. I just think the notion of being a transactional program, can you be one and be consistently good? And I think that Mike Norvell doesn't want to be viewed or doesn't want it to seem like they're a transactional program, but until they sign a top 10 class or 2 or 3 to at least give you that baseline of talent on players, but like players 85 to 45 on the roster to grow into the top 22, you're going to have years like this. And maybe if you would have picked a better quarterback or a different quarterback in the portal, they might be 2-2 now. But their roster from top to bottom was decimated after last year, and there was nobody on the roster to replace it because they didn't recruit well enough. And now you have this, and the class is falling apart. It's like, well, what are reasonable expectations for what Florida State's going to be in 2026 right now with what we're seeing in terms of the ingredients? So, like, I might actually just change it to 8 or 9, to be honest, because, like, it is.
The more you talk, the more I worry, because I don't know where the only way out of it is to sign top 5, top 10 classes. And what have they done that suggests that they can suddenly start doing that?
Well, the other way out of it, too, is going to get 6 or 7 players in the portal over the next 2 years that stay in your program for multiple years and turn out to be Keon Coleman, you know, and Jared Verse. But, like, how that was remarkable. That's not something you can count on.
Well, like, Keon Coleman was a 1 year. Braden Fisk was a 1 year. Jared Verse was a 2 year.
A multi-year.
A lot of it was, like, so Jordan Travis was a transfer. He actually transferred to play for Willie Taggart. But he was a transfer who stayed in the program for 4 years. Fabian Lovett was a transfer who stayed in the program for 3 years. Like, they had a lot of those guys, and a lot of that was due to COVID and basically them flipping the roster when they did. So they went after a lot of young guys, which was also Lane Kiffin's strategy in the portal. That's not as sound of a strategy as it used to be, because now you can just transfer again. It used to be when you were an undergraduate, if you transferred once, Then you had to sit down or, sit out a year if you wanted to transfer again. So if you got that person and you were their second school, they were stuck with you. But that's not the case anymore. And I think that's going to hurt Florida State and Ole Miss going forward. And they got to figure it out.
Yeah. So this might not be saucy. This just might be analysis. But like being afraid that Florida State's never going to get where they think they should be is, I think, a pretty strong take.
No, it's a legitimate question because they have to. There is no other way out. Like you can say they can go sign 5 or 6 good transfer. I don't think so because you still run the risk of bad chemistry, of it not working.
Sure.
The surest way to have a legitimately good college football program year after year after year is to recruit well out of high school. That has not changed. That probably will never change. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it will. But I don't know.
What Florida State did last year.
If it's really like the NFL, like because everybody's freaking out or it's becoming the NFL. Well, guess what? The teams that are the best in the NFL are the ones that draft the best. Like it still works the same way.
Last year, Florida State did something truly remarkable. They caught lightning in a bottle, and they could have, if Jordan Travis didn't get injured, won the national title. So, like, Mike Norvell has already built a team at Florida State that was good enough, top to bottom, to compete with the highest ranked teams in the country. But the thing that is difficult about that is, yes, he did it, but you cannot count lightning in a bottle as something that is sustainable or something that you can continue to see year over year. Like you use that lightning in a bottle to light fire to the other tentacles of your roster building process, and they have not done that. So unless you want lightning to strike twice, to keep going with this lightning analogy, like you're just going to end up not being very good. And I'm afraid for Florida State that this is like a 3, 4, 5 year problem until they can figure out how to put a recruiting class together.
Yeah, and it may be because, again, you're not firing Norvell. The money's too big. So it may be a gut job, which is what Harbaugh did. Harbaugh did a staff gut job, and they became better recruiters because of who he brought in. So that may be how you have to do it. But we'll find out. We'll find out. Ari, what is your next saucy take?
Indiana may make the playoff this year. So we could, like last week, I had like levers to how saucy you wanted to get. I could say Indiana will make the playoff, but I'm not ready to do that. I think it's important for me to temper expectations and just say they've had a really, really good start. If you've been paying attention to what Curt Cignetti has been doing in Bloomington, it is super exciting. And I wanted to frankly apologize for making a mistake on Twitter on Monday because I was wrong about something. And I am hard-headed and I am annoying and I'm an asshole. But the one thing that I will try to do over and over and over again is that if I feel strongly about something or I have an opinion that turns out to be wrong, I want to make it right by admitting that I was wrong and explaining my thought process on how I got there. Okay.
Producer River, clip that and send that to Ari's wife, please.
Yeah. I literally say that.
There.
I say that to her when we're fighting and it drives her nuts. I have two things. I'm like, hey, can you give me a break? I'm not a bad guy. That's one. She hates that.
Ooh.
Two,
that never works.
Is, hey, when I'm wrong, I do a very good job of saying I'm wrong and sorry. So if I'm not doing that, then that means that we have a problem here. So
the problem when you do that, Ari, as someone who's been married a very long time, is they're still mad. And they accept your apology and they're glad you apologized, but they still want to be mad for a little while. And so you're still going to have to get yelled at or get the silent treatment depending on the level of offense. And then it does dissipate faster because you're not being stupid and hard-headed about it, but you are still going to get punished. Apologizing does not change that.
How long does your silent treatment last if you've done like a thing that's like 6 out of 10 on a Spicy Nuggs offense scale?
Ooh, I would say that's a solid 3 hours or so.
Oh, God. If I mess up at home, like I get it for like 36 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, yeah.
I admire the commitment to the bit.
Oh, I just think she hates me during that time. Like, I don't think it's a bit. Like, I think like it is. Somebody wrote they want us to suffer, man. And it's like, when she puts me in the coldness prison, it is brutal. You know, like that walking by without making eye contact thing. But I do my best to not mess up as much as I can. And I did something really stupid this weekend, so you know, it's not her. It's me.
Well, let's talk about the stupid thing you did on Twitter. What were you wrong about on Twitter?
Okay. So we did Bubble Watch. Okay. And I do Bubble Watch every Sunday. Here's the graphic. And if you notice, there's a team there in the next 4 out. And that team is LSU. Okay. And you could probably make the case for Arizona and USC. But Indiana fans got angry at me, and rightfully so, for just nonchalantly putting a flawed LSU team in there who just lost their best player, Harold Perkins has done for the year, ahead of Indiana in the next 4 out, which is a rational thing because the next 4 out, as I mentioned on Tuesday, are teams 16 to 20. Now, if you've been paying attention to Indiana, and I have tangentially, but I haven't been 100% watching all their games locked in, you would know that this is probably a top 20 team right now. At the very least, they've done what they need to do in order to be here. And the funny enough, and the reason why LSU is getting caught in the crossfire here is that LSU and Indiana share an opponent. And that opponent was UCLA, and Indiana beat them better. Now, transitive property doesn't matter, but still, it's another data point.
But Indiana went there and beat them more soundly than LSU beat them in Baton Rouge.
Exactly. So at the very least, we don't know whether or not Indiana is going to keep winning, right? Like there is the danger that Indiana is a plucky, good, fun team that has yet to play anybody really all that outstanding and is probably going to be in a position where, you know, they don't have to play Oregon. They don't have to play USC this year. They don't have to play Ohio State or Michigan until November so that they could fake it all the way to November. Like that is on the table. But in this sport, with the way that this is set up with a 12-team field, I can no longer get away with just favoring the teams that I know have recruited better, right? Because there are going to be more teams that make the playoff. There's going to be a ton of teams who make the playoff now that don't recruit top 10 classes on an annual basis. And I have to do my best and do a better job, frankly, of giving the teams that are in the mix and rightfully in the mix, the credit that they deserve in the moments that they've earned those. So Indiana has done that. And if Indiana beats Northwestern, which I think they will on Saturday, they will improve to 6-0. And they will be represented in my bubble watch. So I wanted to say, A, that if you look at Indiana's schedule, they play Ohio State and Michigan in November, and there's a bye week in between those two games. But everybody else, Northwestern, Nebraska, Washington, Michigan State, and Purdue, if Indiana is as good as people think they might be, and Curt Cignetti has been a wonderful personality, I want to try to get him on the show. Because I think that just a person that talks that talk and walks that walk is just interesting, especially at a place like this. That there is a legitimate path for this team to back into the playoff at 11, 12, 9, whatever. Like the schedule sets up. They don't have Oregon. They could beat Michigan. It's not crazy to think they could beat Michigan. Like
Gary in the chat, is the way Michigan winning football game sustainable? That's the legitimate question. If Michigan's offense is what we've seen the last 2 weeks or the last 2 games, which USC and Minnesota, if that is the offense, Michigan can win most of their remaining games, but Indiana is one of the games that they might lose if they cannot throw a forward pass.
Yeah, especially because Indiana's offense has been exciting. Like, you know, Maryland isn't
Maple Missile, Curtis Rourke.
Maryland hasn't been the 2000 Baltimore Ravens on defense this year, but Indiana turned the ball over 3 times in the first half on Saturday and then won by 2 scores. Like, that's not something that Indiana has done in the past. And the thing that Curt Cignetti has done is driven enthusiasm. He sent an email blast to the entire student body to get there. He predicted the win before it happened, which is something we rarely see coaches, if ever, do. And they upgraded their roster in the portal immediately to get guys in there that he thought could elevate the game. So, like, everything that you would want from a team that should be on bubble watch right now, Indiana has. And this is my olive branch of saying, hey, I think that this could happen. And I probably made an oversight on Sunday by not putting them in, and that will be rectified when they keep winning this coming Sunday.
Well, I'm with you. I think there's a chance. Look, they have to beat Nebraska, and I don't think that's a gimme. I think that's going to be a great game. But I do think they have to beat Nebraska, and they probably have to split Michigan and Ohio State.
Yeah.
They actually may get a mulligan. I don't know. Do they get a mulligan if they beat Michigan? Like, can they be 10-2 with this schedule?
Well, I think it depends on whether or not they make the Big Ten championship. Because if they are 10-2 and then don't make the Big Ten championship, then the two teams in the Big Ten championship are probably going to go, and then there might be a Notre Dame problem. It depends on let's put it this way. Indiana has a chance to get in at 10-2. I don't know if I feel strongly either way about yes, they will or no, they won't at this point, because we still have a lot of games to watch. But like, I do think that there is a legitimate pathway for this team to make it based on the schedule. Now, if the Nebraska game was Oregon, I probably wouldn't have written that column, right? Like, I think that Indiana is a good team. I don't know that they are a great team that I think is going to start all of a sudden competing with Ohio State. The spread of that game, in November could be 31 points for all I know. I don't know. But in the new makeup of the sport, it's not just about the Ohio State, Georgias, and Alabamas anymore. I've begrudgingly shared my opinion on the expansion of the playoff a million times. I don't want to do it anymore. We have to embrace the new system, and the new system includes teams like Indiana in that system, and
which is fun, which is very fun because they had no chance in the old system. Even a team this good had no chance in the old system. But
see, this is the thing, and I don't want to get dragged into this, but like, Indiana did have a chance in the old system, because they could still beat the teams on their schedule and get there. Okay, so like, that's the thing. Like, in the old system,
they are never going to be Ohio State. As good as he is, they're not. They're never going to be that. They're never going to recruit that way.
In a given year, they could beat one of them one year, right? Like, it could happen if they're really good.
Maybe. But how about this? How about we just get a new Indiana every year, and that's fun. We let some people have some fun that don't normally get to have some fun. So people get to go to Mother Bear's Pizza and talk about how great the Hoosiers are at football, because they don't get to do that very often.
Yeah. And do you want to like split off here to a secondary discussion before we go to the final take?
Absolutely.
Let's bring up Raymond's comment here, and I'm going to let you sink your teeth into that one.
Do you guys think Cignetti is in this for the long haul, Andy? I think Cignetti is going to go where he needs to go to win. Do I think he wants to stay at Indiana forever? He strikes me as a person who would like to win national championships. So no, I don't think he'll be at Indiana forever. How long will he be at Indiana? That probably depends on the size of the check they can write him.
Is there a certain school that you're familiar with that seems to be
that might have a job soon?
Interested in him at the moment? Like, I don't know. Like,
I don't know how interested the Florida people are in Curt Cignetti. I think he would actually be a tough sell, because they'd be like, whoa, he just won at James Madison and one good year at Indiana, blah, blah, blah. But, and I've said this about Jamie Chadwell too, who's won at every level he's been at. Like, guys who win at every level tend to just keep winning. Kalen DeBoer, good example of this. Chris Kleiman is a good example of this. Lance Leipold's not having a great year, but he worked a miracle at Kansas. Like, guys who win at every level tend to keep winning. But I don't know that that's like I think they're going to want something sexier than that, because they hired a guy from the Sun Belt before, and that bothers them.
Like, the fit thing is like, we are scarred by the Sun Belt Billy comments.
Rod Smith, he doesn't know the recruiting landscape in the South. Rod, do you know where he worked in 2007? Do you know what staff he was on? Oh yeah, he was on Nick Saban's first Alabama staff and worked there for a while. I think he can probably handle recruiting in the South.
He just gets it. I have a lot of respect for people, and Fran Brown is doing this too a little bit, who is at Syracuse, another place that you would consider. Like, honestly, I think like
Fran Brown, by the way, another one. If you go, well, I don't know if you can recruit in the South, because he's a Jersey guy, recruited in the Northeast. He went to Georgia. He recruited just fine. Fine.
But I do like the people who go to places that are viewed as just an impossible place to win and then rock shit out there. Like, I don't know what Syracuse Friday night, we got a banger on television Friday night. Okay, we're going to get to see more Fran Brown. That team could be undefeated right now with one different defensive call. But I do think that he is just an interesting, entertaining, and he makes you want to root for him. And I think that part of that, maybe that goes away when you're at Florida, because no one's rooting for the lovable underdog Florida Gators.
You're not a lovable underdog.
Yeah.
Like getting on stage and saying, of course we want to beat Purdue, but we're going after Ohio State too. Like we're coming for your necks. Like that part, it doesn't ring the same at Florida or somewhere like that, or at Auburn or at LSU. Like it doesn't,
but in December,
you're supposed to be able to beat those teams.
But in December, when Kurt Signetti was asked, what's your recruiting sales pitch to get kids to come to Indiana? And we're talking about a guy too, by the way, who is trying to recruit Juju Lewis right now. Like how many other people at places like Indiana, and granted, there is a connection with the staff in Lewis, have been like resigned to the notion that 5-star quarterbacks are not supposed to go there and just don't recruit kids because there's no point in wasting time. Like, I think that everything that he's doing is a admirable way of proving that, hey, we aren't constricted by the expectations and what things are supposed to happen to Indiana. We're in a Big Ten school. We get all that Big Ten kindergarten cop money. And we like that Arnold kindergarten
cop money. Like what Arnold got? Okay.
Yeah.
I just learned yesterday what Stallone got for Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. So yeah, I think
what did they get?
You're right. It was like $12 million at a time when that was more than anybody ever got for anything.
Yeah. So yeah, anyway, Olive Branch to Indiana. Don't hate me. Love you guys. Rooting for you. I know that we're not supposed to be rooting, but who doesn't love a good underdog story? And now you actually have a chance to be in the system. So, you should have been included and you will be. Just keep winning though. Don't embarrass me now. Because that's what happens. Everybody was tweeting at me like, this is the kiss of death for Indiana now. You wrote this column, Indiana's cooked.
You've just doomed them to lose to Northwestern, Ari. That's what you did.
But no, they're actually really good. And I also said, if your life depended on it, would you pick Indiana to beat LSU? And in the past, that would have been a good point. But this year, I'm not sure that's a great point.
What would the spread be in a hypothetical neutral site Indiana LSU game? This
is a bad at math podcast, Andy, but the FPI, whatever that formula is at ESPN, has them next to each other, 19 and 20. And I don't know that I would.
So the spread would be within a couple of points. It'd be basically
probably, yeah. Well, I think that the spread would also have an impact on the helmet and also how people probably would be betting it. So I probably think it would probably be somewhere around 7, if I'm being honest, not 2. But I think that Indiana could win the game, is what I'm saying. And that isn't an insane thing that wasn't it for me to say you would pick LSU if your life depended on it was just wrong. So anyway, that's my formal apology. You can give me the silent treatment for 36 hours, but I'm sorry. Just forgive me. I'm a flawed human. I'm doing my best.
There you go. I think they're talking to you again, Ari. All right. One more saucy take from you, Ari, and then I will decide which is your sauciest take. This is the one you texted me about.
Yeah.
This is the one you were worried about.
I'm just stretching out my back a little bit before people start jumping on it.
You were worried about it, but you actually said this on Saturday night's show. So I don't know why you're that worried about it.
I believe it. And I don't remember saying it on the show. I thought I said he was the best Ohio State receiver.
You did, and then you kept going though. So, but go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to look you dead in the eyes. That's my tradition when I feel like I want to say something right here into the camera. I think Jeremiah Smith is the best receiver in college football, period. Already.
Dun, dun, dun. So,
I don't know. If I was building a team.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, I know that Ryan Williams exists. I know.
Well, I think that
Luther Burden exists.
Ryan Williams, another freshman. I'm gonna name receivers, and we're gonna stress test this statement. So I'm gonna name some receivers, and you tell me how you feel about it.
That's why I'm doing this.
Okay. And we're saying right now, because I think we all agree that Jeremiah Smith, as a sophomore or junior, is probably going to be the best receiver in college football. Like there will be no argument about it.
I guess what I'm saying is,
about a year.
Let me say it this way. If I was building a team and I could pick one receiver to join my team right now, I would pick Jeremiah Smith.
Okay. Here, I'm going to go down the list. Trey Harris.
I love Trey Harris, but no.
Okay. T-Mac.
I love T-Mac. I love T-Mac, but no.
Because T-Mac,
I've done this
Jeremiah
already.
Smith has over most of these guys is his physical attributes
physical
are
traits.
vastly superior. But
And
T-Mac and Luther Burden from Missouri both have physical attributes that come closer to Jeremiah Smith's.
Yeah, well, and I'm happy that you brought that up, Andy, because it's not just because he makes circus catches in every game. The reason why I think that is because I think Jeremiah Smith, his size, his athleticism, and his speed, the combination of that just makes him a freak. Like, he is a freak in a way that, like, I don't know that the country has caught up to yet. Recruitniks know, people who watch Ohio State know, but, like, I think that people are probably going to get upset today, but I think by December, people are going to be like, oh, shit. Like, yeah, that was right.
Well, yeah,
like,
you got people like Rocky Top Tom in the chat who says he's put up numbers against nobody's. That's for sure. Rocky Top Tom, he's going to put up numbers against everybody. You just haven't been paying enough attention if you don't think he's going to be able to do this against everybody.
I think that Jeremiah Smith is a person who could play in the league like at the end of the year. Like
he could play there now.
From a body type standpoint, like if you've like watched an interview of him, like I don't know why I'm explaining. People know who Jeremiah Smith is, but like this guy is the best receiver recruit of all time, and like he's already cracked the number one receiver spot basically at Ohio State, and like Emeka Egbuka's on the team. Like it's not like he's just beating out losers at Ohio State that no one. I mean, Emeka Egbuka has been on first round draft boards already, and this guy's role is what it is at Ohio State. So like we're already seeing him in the same roster in the same receiver room as some of the that has similar skill sets as some of the receivers you're going to compare him to already. So like, I don't know.
Now here's what I will say. What makes this interesting, and I am shocked that I'm saying this, is Ryan Williams, because Ryan Williams is not physically what Jeremiah Smith is. And if we're talking about what they can do in the NFL, then obviously you're going to take Jeremiah Smith every time. But in terms of what they can be in college, like could Ryan Williams be as good as Devontae Smith by his junior year? Like, yes. Could he be as good as Devontae Smith was in 2020? Because that's about the best receiver season I've ever seen in college football.
Yeah, no, there's no question. And like Ryan Smith, like when I say someone is the best, that doesn't mean that the other ones stink. Like I know Ryan Williams is really, really good.
Right. No, but like, I'm just trying to compare the two right now.
Yeah.
Like,
but the reason why I picked Jeremiah Smith over Ryan Williams is the physical trait aspect of this. Like it's not just like Ryan Williams is just really, really fast and talented. But like Jeremiah Smith can, like he caught one pass with one hand from Devin Brown on Saturday that everyone saw on the sideline where he did this and grabbed it in. But like, what about the touchdown when we were at B-Dubs where he caught the ball against Western Michigan 5 yards or 6 yards off the line of scrimmage with his back to the defense, 4 people around him, and then he ran to the end zone untouched. Like the physical attributes that this kid has are pretty unbelievably incomparable. And like we were in Columbus and we had an interview with Ryan Day and I asked him about Jeremiah Smith, but like we've had discussions of like, if Marvin Harrison Jr. were still on the team, like who would be the number one receiver? Now it'd probably still be Marv. I think it's still crazy to say that, but like the fact that that's even a question, like already, like
because Marv is playing well as an
he's
NFL
like scoring
rookie.
Touchdowns every single time he's playing in an NFL game. But like the physical attributes of this kid and the production that he's had so far, like I know what's in the tank here, and we haven't seen it, and it's hard to predict it when somebody's only played 5 games and they've played against bad opponents. And Ryan Williams is 17, but like I know I covered Ohio State for 10 years. Like I know what it looks like when you see it, and like I've never seen anything like this.
Well, I'm excited to see what he can do going forward. I think this is it's a fun debate to have, and it's a great saucy take. In fact, I am naming this the sauciest take of the week because it is saucy. Producer River asked a good question, like, would you take him over Travis Hunter? Now, I think in fairness to the discussion, you have to ignore Travis Hunter as a cornerback.
Yeah.
Because
I would take Travis Hunter as a player because he does both.
Always, because you get a number one corner too. Like, So
do we know for sure like what Hunter is going to be in the league? Is Hunter a bona fide?
No, we don't. I think it's trending toward receiver. But look, Bill Belichick's going to be back in the NFL next year. Like somebody's going to be. You only get 53 guys on a roster. Somebody's going to say, you know what? I'm gonna play this guy both ways because he is physically just different than everybody else. Like nobody should be able to play every snap the way he does. So he could actually give you, like if you play, let's say you made him a full-time receiver, he could give you half the defensive snaps, quality reps in the NFL as like a nickel corner. It's insane.
The only thing that scares me about him is he's just not very big. That's all. And
but that's okay, like, playing corner receiver. That's fine.
Yeah. I don't know. Just like when you think like Kyron Williams running at him, like it's just a different ball game up there. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna have to step up and make hits. I don't. Like, I'm not saying I don't think that he's great. I love him. He's my Heisman guy. But like the thing that is great about him, and the reason why he should win the Heisman, Andy, is that we're having a legitimate discussion right now on a podcast in October that we don't know what position he should play in the NFL. Like that. It's not just what should he play in college. Like he's good enough to play in the NFL. But like Hunter has ball skills that will make your jaw drop. So like, you know,
which is why I think it's trending toward receiver.
But everybody who listens to the show is smart and they follow the game the way that we do. And they're very aware of Jeremiah Smith. Everybody's going to know who this kid is by the end of November. Everybody.
Stephen Wilson says he thinks the Indiana take is the spiciest. I don't. I think if you just said they will make the playoff, I'd have definitely made that the spiciest take. But the fact that, like, talking about that they can, no, that assumes they have to win the Michigan game, which is no easy assumption. But yeah, they can.
It's saucy, but it's not crazy.
Yeah. No, the Jeremiah Smith one right now, 5 games into his college career, 4 games into his college career, is the sauciest one. But again, we're going to look back on it probably in a year and be like, of course he is. What are we even talking about here?
What are we talking about?
So I love it though. This is when
but I have to say this about Ryan Williams though. Ryan Williams changing his picture on Instagram to Michael Vick holding a dog and like kill everybody on his, like that dude is electric. So like, I don't want to like get through this conversation and not give that guy his flowers because buddy, we're talking about not only a person who's very good at football, but I think he's going to be an eccentric personality and somebody we're talking about quite a bit. Like the sport is in good hands with these receivers moving forward.
Have we confirmed the kill everybody is a tribute to Alvin Mack? Because if it is, the kid's a cinephile and I appreciate that. So, this is so much fun. This season has been so much fun so far. We're not even halfway through it yet. Stop saying it's week 6. I don't want to hear it. We're not halfway through it. It's going to keep getting better. The week's going to keep getting better too because you guys are going to help program tomorrow's show. It's a Dear Andy and Ari show. You know what to do. I'm at Andy_Staples on Twitter and Instagram. Ari is at Ari Wasserman on Twitter and Instagram. You can email AndyStaples on3@gmail.com if you have a truly epic question that does not fit into a social media post. Send us your questions. Help drive the show. We love your ideas. We love the directions. We love the way your minds work. You guys' minds are almost as twisted as Ari's, and I love it.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but
I got some demons to work through the next 36 hours, so you're just going to have to rely on some really good questions. Send those questions in. We'll talk to you tomorrow.